I really think I've got this opportunity to share a part of my life that not too many people know about. I'd just like to start off with a short reading from Luke. Everyone who asks receives. All who seek find. And the door is open to everyone who knocks. That statement is really beautiful, and that became a reality in my life. And to get to that, I've got to go back a few years in my life. About 8 years ago, my wife and I, Gail, we had a beautiful marriage. I would rate it from 1 to 10, I would rate it a 9.5. We had our act together. We had 3 beautiful children. We had beautiful friends. And everything was going great. I was a good Catholic, whatever, what I thought that was. I went to church on Sunday. I gave, my $1 a week. And one of the things about me, I was a very self-righteous person back then. I was always, when somebody got divorced or there was a problem, I said, oh, it's too bad they're not like me, they don't have their act together. And I was always, very high in putting myself on a pedestal and figuring that nothing could knock me off, that I had my act together. Well, back in 1970, my life turned around. I was on a ball team, and I started going out drinking with the fellas. I'd never done that before. I never went out. Gail and I, we did everything together. But I started going out with the fellas, and Satan was moving in because I liked it. And I went out more and more. And it really got bad. My wife and I would fight about it, and it really got to the point where I was going out maybe 4, sometimes 5 nights a week. And I was completely living a lie, because on Saturday night we had some dear friends that some of them are here tonight that we used to go over or go out with, and Gail and I would always put on a big smiley face and go out with them like there was nothing wrong. And we had just probably come back from telling each other, to go to hell or I hate you, and that's how bad it got. And I even stopped going to church. And God was always trying, he was backing me, trying to change me, but I didn't want him. I told him to get lost. I said, I don't need you. I'm happy with what I'm doing. I don't care what happens. Just don't bug me. Get out of my life. Well, as I said, it went on for about 3 years. Gail is going to talk a little bit about what happened in them 3 years. But it was one night when I went into the bathroom, and Gail was not home, and I looked in the mirror, and for the first time, I saw the person that I became, and that kind of person was an I person. I only did everything that, if it affected me, I did it. That's the kind of person I had become. I did not care for my wife. I had stopped caring really for my children because I wouldn't have done what I did. So I had become an I person. I was a phony, I was a liar, and I hated myself. And I remember going in my bedroom that night, and I fell on my knees, and I cried like a baby. And I just asked God, I said, I don't want to be this way. If you can help me, help me. I didn't know what that meant, because back then I didn't realize anything about renewal or you had to give your life to Christ. I just was in a desperate situation, and I asked the Lord to help me. Well, it didn't start off the way I wanted it, even though the Lord was working. A few weeks or a month later, Gail told me she was pregnant. And that really blew my mind, because I did not want another child at that time. I didn't know where our life was going at that time. And through that pregnancy, it got bad. It got to the point where, in my mind or in my heart, I was hoping that I couldn't say I was praying. I was hoping that the baby would die, that Gail would fall, that something would happen. I did not want that baby. But the Lord was working, and through that year that she was pregnant, we lived through that, and Kimmy was born. And I know Gail always signs the cards now, precious baby Kim, because she is a miracle from the Lord. And little things started happening, And I can't explain it, only that I knew I wanted more, or something more in life, and I joined Nocturnal Adoration Society. And I remember coming here sitting alone at night and being so convicted by the Lord, the kind of life I was leading, that I had to change. And then I said, gee, I've got to do something. I've got to get away from the I person that I am and start helping people. So I joined the Human Development Committee. I was striving for anything. And I met two people in Human Development, Fran and Mary Pierce, that they had such a glow about them. I used to come home and tell Gail, these two people, they're unbelievable. They just love, they share, they've got something that I want. I didn't know what it was. But Fran talked to me about a retreat. He said, there's a retreat experience. It may do you good. I know you're struggling in your life, and this may give you an opportunity to reflect on your life. I had never made a retreat in my life. So finally, I did go on this retreat. And on that retreat, I will never forget the opening statement that Father Ray Booth made. It was a dark night just like this, and he said, he was examining our conscience. He said, if I could put a movie screen up here right now, and the whole world could see, and we could put your life on it, what would you think? Well, he was talking to me. I wanted to crawl under the table because, for my life to be shown on this screen, no way. I was not proud of my life at that time. At another point in that retreat, a layperson, gave a talk. And he talked about, in his talk, he said he had received a letter from his 17-year-old son, and he wanted to share it with us. And he read this letter, and among other things, it went on to say that all his friends had idols. Some kids looked up to Paul Newman or Mickey Mantle. Everybody had an idol they wanted to be like, because, they were sports stars or they had money or whatever. And he said, Dad, he said, I have an idol too. He said, that's you. He says, not because you have money, not because you play baseball, not because you're a good football player. He says, you're my idol because I can see Jesus Christ in you. That moment, I was so convicted that I made a vow to the Lord that that's what I was going to do. I was going to go home, and I was going to strive to make my children, my wife, see Jesus Christ in me. And I really gave my life to Christ, totally in that weekend. It was a weekend that I was touched so deeply. I remember coming home telling Gail that I had seen Jesus Christ. That may sound funny to you, and I really don't know what I meant back then, but I know I experienced the Jesus of love and the Jesus of forgiveness. And it has changed our life immensely. And I remember Father Reddington, at the beginning of this sessions, he told a story about he made a retreat, and he said he felt that the Lord Jesus, he felt the love of Jesus personally, really for the first time maybe. He said that he loved him. Father Reddington, he loved him. And I get goosebumps because that's the way I felt in that weekend, that Jesus Christ loved me, David Wakefield, that I was number one, I was unique, I was one of a kind, I was so special to him. I brought it down personally. To explain that, the only thing I can think of, if we all were in Yankee stadiums, everybody, or even here you could say it, but let's say we all went to Yankee Stadium and there's 70,000 people in the stands, and Jesus came out and stood on home plate, and he says, I love you all. Okay, that's the way I always felt, that Jesus loved me. Sure, I'm up there and he says, I love you all. That's a nice feeling. But the Jesus now that I met in that weekend, he would say, David Wakefield, come down. And I would come down to home plate, and he would put his arms around me and say, David, I love you. He would touch me. He'd call me by name. And that's what he does tonight to each and every one of us here. He calls us by name. And he says, I love you. I love you, Sue, Karen, June. He loves you. That's the Jesus I know now, personally. And life is still a struggle. Just because I've given my life to Jesus does not mean that my wife and I don't have problems. We do. But we just know that now we can make it because we have Jesus now. And he's healed our relationships 100%. We had that baby, Kimmy, and she's been the most beautiful thing in our life. For the three other children that I have, it's been a blessing. My whole family's a blessing now to me, and we really get along beautiful. And I'm not up here, preaching down at anybody. I'm just sharing an experience in my life where Jesus Christ touched me in a special way. I just wanted to tell you that he does forgive, and it's unconditional. When I left that weekend, I've never thought back to the 3 years the grief that I gave my family. That's gone. I knew it was forgiven. So I thank you for listening. The only other point I wanted to make in the beginning is I wanted to thank the few teenagers up front here that came tonight. And they came here tonight to support me because they knew I was giving this talk. And I just love them very much, these young people. We hear so many bad things about teenagers. I think the teenagers are a holy name. Are really great. And I thank you for coming and supporting me.
Hi. I'm going to fill you in on what was happening in my life during those 3 years. I was, before those 3 years, I was a Sunday Catholic that followed all the rules and everything. I did everything the church asked me to do. And all these laws out here, but it wasn't in here. But I followed, and I was complacent. I was satisfied with the way things were. I had the husband I wanted, I had the children I wanted, I had the home I wanted, I had beautiful friends, and I was happy. Once in a while at night, I would think about, is this all there is? And it wasn't really a question. It was yeah, I guess that's all there is. And I didn't even look for anything more. I was just positive there wasn't anything more. And so I just was complacent, and I was satisfied. And then those 3 years, those 1970, 71, when my world fell apart, I went through this period in my life with our relationship was totally broken. And it was a total disaster for me because my marriage was everything. It was just everything to me. And that's why I was so full of pride, because I had this fantastic marriage that when it crumbled, there wasn't any way I could tell anybody about it. So for those 3 years, I had a private nervous breakdown all by myself because I could never face anyone and say that I had failed. So I was alone through the entire thing. I used to come every Sunday and sit right over there, the same seat, and cry at Sunday Mass for 3 years. And I attempted suicide twice. I took sleeping pills one time. But deep down, I knew there weren't enough pills in there to really kill me. I just wanted to die just for a little while so that I could just escape that horrible pain that was there every day. Another time, I used a razor blade on my wrist. And as I was about to do it, I can remember so clearly yet. I sobered up at that instant that I was going to do it, and when I look back, I know it was Jesus sobering me up. I didn't realize it at that time. But I thought of my children and how selfish I was being to them. That just because I couldn't cope with my own unhappiness, I would make them suffer all their life. So I knew I would never try that again. I love my children too much, and I couldn't let them suffer. And I thank God for that instant that he stopped me. So then I tried the bar scene because I figured Dave was going out to bars and that I would try it. And that was the most depressing thing. There we were, all of us laughing and drinking and dancing, and all of us empty inside, all these people. Everyone there with their own pain. And I knew I was playing with dynamite going there because you're just starving for attention, you know, starving for someone to just look at you and act like you're a person. And I knew I was heading for big trouble. And even though my marriage was disintegrating, I thought, well, at least I'll still have my self-respect, so I stopped going there. I went to a lawyer to talk about a divorce. But again, it was going to involve, it would have been devastating for the kids again. So I didn't pursue that much farther. And then when I found out I was pregnant in January of '74, I really was so bitter that I could be pregnant, because now what was always the happiest part of our life when I was pregnant was now a total disaster, because with our marriage going, it just would be wrong for a baby to come on the way. And I cursed the Lord for 9 months, well, probably 7 months. I started to accept it the 8th and 9th month and complained and whined that whole time. And I felt as Dave did, although we never mentioned it to each other, but we both felt the same about wishing the baby I would have a miscarriage. But Dave came into the delivery room with me when Kimmy was born, and he was transformed in the delivery room. Something happened in there, and he never went out again from the moment Kimmy was born. And I realize now that Jesus was saying to me all that time that I was complaining, he was saying, just wait, you'll see. He had it all planned, and the Lord is so wise and so good. We think we can arrange our lives. You know, we know what's best for us, but Jesus is the only one that really knows what's best for us. And so our lives started going back together again, and the healing process started. We were so happy to sit every single night and watch the baby let her make faces as she sat in her infant seat, and there wasn't any place in the world either one of us wanted to be but right there and just look at her. When Dave came home from that retreat weekend, I was so happy for him. He was so excited and saying how he's going to move mountains and change the world, and I was very happy for him, but I didn't understand what he was talking about. So then I went on that. 3 months later, I made the same retreat, and I realized for the first time how much Jesus really loved me. I had never experienced that before, and that he forgave me for everything. And the presence of Jesus was just everywhere. I remember I was so excited when I came home that week. The garbage men were coming up the driveway, and I just wanted to run out and hug them and kiss them, and I thought, well, I better not. They wouldn't understand. So I restrained myself. And I just had this whole new outlook, this whole new reason to live. Even though Kimmy gave me, and our marriage was growing together, that was a beautiful reason to live too, but this was something new in my life. And I had a different look on my possessions in my life. I realized that everything I own now would belong to the Lord. Jesus owned everything. Dave's paycheck, my furniture, the house, everything belonged to Jesus now. I had a whole different outlook on that. And one time when the high school kids left, I had just bought a brand new couch. It was brand new. And the high school class, the kids had just left that night. And I noticed a big ink spot on the couch. It was just a total 7 days old. And I walked up to it and I said, well, gee, I'm sorry, Jesus, look what happened to your couch. I just entirely different up here. Just my possessions didn't possess me any longer. And I found out that I could be honest with Jesus, and I could tell him how I felt. Before, how we're polite in front of strangers, and we don't really say how we feel in front of strangers, but when you get to know somebody and you become friends, you can be honest with them and tell them how you really feel. Well, this is what I felt was happening with Jesus. And 2 years ago when I had surgery, it was an awful pain. The medication wasn't working, and I was really getting angry night after night after night, laying awake there, and this pain was just gnawing at me. So I just said, all right, Jesus, now look, if we're supposed to be such good friends, my pain should be different. I says, I'm not saying I shouldn't have pain, but it should be different than people that don't know you, that don't love you, or that aren't trying to know more of you. Now, damn it, I think, something ought to be done about this. Well, the pain went away. It really did, and I was able to get to sleep that night. And the next morning when I woke up, the pain was back, but it was different, and I was able to cope with it. And I just learned from that, just be honest with Jesus, because he knows how you feel anyway, so just tell him how you feel. And I had seen a sign once that said, "May the peace of Christ disturb you," and I thought that really didn't make much sense. How could peace, if you have peace, how can you feel disturbed? But I realized now, because I had this peace of Jesus in me, and yet there was this restlessness in me. I was no longer complacent. I was no longer satisfied with the way things were. I had this hunger in me to know what Jesus' plan was for my life. And I no longer felt satisfied anymore. The peace was there, but there was this restlessness in me too, and I knew what that sign meant now. When the peace of Christ disturb you, it really said an awful lot to me. And I learned that I had an awful lot to learn also. That Jesus works in our life day by day. And when I made that retreat in August 1975, I didn't have it all together in that day, and there wasn't anything more I had to learn. It was a starting point, and it's a lifetime, day by day process that the Lord works in your life, and he works in your faults and tries to perfect you day by day, and it takes a lifetime, and he may be in a whole lifetime. I may not allow him to do it in my lifetime, but it's so exciting to see what he's going to teach you next. As long as there's a breath in your body, he has more to teach you, and it's exciting every day just to find out what's going to be new today. I really feel that those 3 years were very important, that Dave and I had to experience that, or we would have been, if we had come to the Lord without going through that, we would have been so self-righteous and really cocky. We would never have been able to understand other people's problems and have compassion for tragic things going on in other people's lives. And now I know why it was important that we experience that. And you may be wondering how we're able to talk about the past like this. And the Word of God has a way to explain it that's better than I can say. It says in 2 Corinthians, "If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old order has passed away. Now all is new." Now anytime Dave and I ever talk about the past, it's only to give glory to Jesus for what he's done. There's never any resentment or anything there. It's gone. The Lord just took it away. Any bitterness that was there. And we know the old part of us is gone. And every day he's trying to recreate a new life in us. And I hope, next week I'm a new person than I am today, and the week after that, and the week after that. And he does that in your life. He does it in all our lives. And that's why that song, Amazing Grace, means so much to me, because amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Sound that saved a wretch like me. And we all are wretches, all of us. And Jesus makes something beautiful out of our lives. And since August 75, that song has had such meaning for me. And there's such hope, because Jesus took me from that pit down there, that hopeless despair, that no way out, and just raised me to where life is the most exciting, beautiful thing. And I really thank him for that. And my prayer for you is, may the peace of Christ disturb you. God bless you.